light a candle, God can light a star. All of them are beautiful, shining where they are. Time had passed on earth, and Adam and Eve had a baby boy. His name was Cain. Cain was strong, and he delighted in the things of the earth. He loved playing with all that he could find. He was quite a strong, fierce boy, and he enjoyed making new things. He delighted in planting seeds too, and he loved finding new trees and seeds that lay around on the earth. Now Cain also had a very sharp mind. He would put together tools that were never made before. Whilst he would play with sticks, he would carry them around and figure out what he could do with them. One day he banged them together and he noticed that they cracked easily. Another day he would rub them together and he would see that a spark would come of it. But one day Cain found a little groove in a little stone lying nearby, and he thought he was going to put one of these sticks into that groove. And when he did that, he noticed that the stone was hard enough to knock the earth, and realized he could plow the earth using this new tool that he had made. And he called it the hammer. The first hammer was made. Another day had passed, and he was playing with some stones. And Cain decided he's also going to rub those stones together. And when he did this, he found that they created sparks. This amused him. And also when he looked closer at the stone, he noticed that it became a little bit more sharper than before. He thought, I'm going to put a stick into this. So he took one of his sticks that he had found on the earth and he plunged it into the stone, and it sat carefully, tightly together. He then used the new tool upon a tree, and he gave one big whisk, and the tree split in half. Cain created the first axe. Then time had come for Eve to give birth to another baby boy named Abel. He was quite different from his brother. He was much more gentle and kind. He delighted in the animals of the earth. He loved them, and so all the animals befriended him, and they became tame when he was near. He especially loved the sheep, and he had his own flock of sheep. He would like to call himself a shepherd of some sorts. Now Abel loved looking after the sheep and cared for them dearly, and he also loved to sit by Eve's side and listen to her stories. Sometimes Abel's kind and generous nature would annoy his brother Cain, and Cain often thought about why this was so. And he had thoughts as to why his brother wasn't as strong and as mighty as he was. One day, Cain was working in the fields and planting his many seeds when Abel was approaching him with something quite furry in his hand. Abel was walking to Cain with a coat that he had made from one of the sheep's skin. This was nice and warm, and Abel was excited to hand it over to his brother. And as Abel approached Cain, Cain immediately knew what he was going to do. And Abel said, "My brother, whom I love so dearly, here is a coat I made for you. Please take it as a gift from me." And Cain took the coat, but feeling very guilty, didn't know what to give in return. He didn't have anything, and he hardly thought of giving his brother gifts. So he turned to the side where he was working, and he saw a basket of apples that he had just collected from a tree he was growing. And there was a basket of good apples, ripe green apples, and the other basket had wormy apples in it. Now Cain loved the things that he owned, and he wasn't so kind as to give them away as quickly as Abel would. And he looked at the baskets, and he could not give over his green juicy apples. Instead, he gave one of the wormy apples to his brother as a gift, and he took it and he handed it to Abel. Now Abel was delighted by this juicy, wormy apple that his brother had given him, and he wasn't at all worried about the holes or the little rotten piece on the side. This made Cain feel even more strange, and he was confused. Why would my brother accept such a gift? And why is he always like this? Nonetheless, Abel hugged his brother and walked off with the wormy apple. It seemed as though a wolf had snatched one of his sheep, one of his nice fat sheep, and blood was spilt everywhere. He shouted for his brother, "Cain, Cain, come over here!" Cain immediately woke and saw what had happened. Cain promised his brother that he was going to use the sticks that he found to build him a fence to keep the wolf away. Now Eve, their mother, always told them stories before they would go off to sleep at night. And the one story she kept on telling them was about paradise and how beautiful it was there, how food grew and how they didn't have to search for anything or hunt for anything, that everything was there in abundance. And Abel especially loved the story. But one night, Adam had something especially new to tell them. He spoke of a sacrificial fire and how it is important to pray to God. And the boys knew that they always had to be thankful for what they have. But for the first time, their father had told them that they need to sacrifice something of their own to God to be thankful for what they have. The boys then set off to figure out what they were going to sacrifice. Abel knew he was going to take the sheep he loved most, the one that was super fat. He was definitely going to give that as an offering to God. Cain had a bit of a struggle. When he went back to his garden to see what he could give God, he noticed that he had lots of corn. He had some good, delicious yellow corn, and he had some wilted corn that was bug infested. Cain thought for a while, and he decided he was going to give the wilted corn as an offering to God, for it was going to be burnt anyway, not as though God will see. And so he took his wilted corn and made himself ready for the sacrificial fire. Now Abel walked gently with his sheep towards where they were going to make this fire. Cain, on the other hand, was already thinking about how he was going to make this fire and how his fire was going to be bigger than his brother's. He had a lot of pride in putting this work together, and he grabbed the two most biggest stones and rubbed them until sparks flew to make the biggest fire possible. Cain and Abel then started their sacrificial fire. Abel's offering burnt beautifully, and the fire was high, and the flames grew, and you could see that God accepted his offering. Cain, on the other hand, even though he had big sparks, the flames did not burn. There was no fire to see. It just went up in a black smoke. Cain looked at his brother and realized that God did not accept his offering. This made his heart very, very sore, and he became angry. He thought, "My brother is always in the good. Why not me?" Abel said a little prayer of thanks to God for all that he had done and for all that he has to this point. And Abel, just as he opened his eyes, realized that his offering was accepted. Just then his brother said, "Abel, let's go for a walk immediately." Abel was quite shocked by the sudden decision that his brother made, but nonetheless stood up and walked with Cain. Cain walked behind him. All he could think of was this burning anger that was inside of him, and he picked up a stone and he threw Abel, and it knocked him to the ground. Cain looked and realized that he had hurt his brother, and he shouted, "Abel, get up! Get up!" And Abel would not move. He did not stir. Cain had then realized what he had done, and he walked closer to shove Abel a little bit, and nothing happened. Just then he heard a little noise from a tree, and it was a little bird, a crow, who was just born, that fell out of its nest. And when it fell to the ground, it died. The mother crow then flew down and started scratching at the dirt of the earth to make a little grave for the bird, and she covered her little chick. Cain saw this and knew that he immediately should do something about his brother, and so he also took some sticks and dug a hole to make a grave for Abel. He then ran as fast as he could back to Adam and Eve, but whilst he was running, he heard a voice say, "Cain, "Where is your brother?" And when this voice spoke, the earth shook a little bit. It was as though the earth beneath his feet was going to give way. Cain did not have any answers, and he wondered where this voice was coming from. He knew in his heart that it was God who spoke, for Eve told him of this voice that spoke in the Garden of Eden, and how when they were banished, this voice shook the earth. And so he was frightened, and Cain took a few steps back, and he thought, he has no answer, for he had done wrong. And God said, "Because of your bad deeds, sin shall follow you daily." And just as Cain heard this, he ran even faster than before back to Adam and Eve. When he got there, he told them the news, and they wept, and they could not understand. And Cain just left the house, not knowing what he had done or what was going to happen next. He heard through the window how his father and mother comforted one another. Adam told Eve, "Do not worry, my dear, for when we too return to heaven, we shall see Abel again." Light in heaven, light in me, light through me on earth will be. Now, class 3s, after you have heard the story, I would like for you to draw the two brothers, Cain and Abel, just as you see here.